bay leaves, okay, nutmeg and cumin. So it has all of those warm, it's very powerful flavors. So again, I ask you to invite you to please be very ginger with it. You know, just use a little bit, and then to taste add more, because each of these spices really depends on your personal palate. If you want more of the cumin flavor in your masala, less of the coriander, more of the coriander, less of the nutmeg, that's really up to you. And this is why every masala in a Pakistani or an Indian kitchen will be a signature masala mixture of the chef and or the cook preparing that dish, okay? So the wonderful thing sitting around the table back home is that people are eating the same thing, but the conversation around the table is, what am I tasting here? Oh, I'm getting fenugreek on the back of my throat. Oh, there's more cumin or whichever it is, but it is signature to that particular cook who prepared that dish for you. So the garam masala really makes this mixture into more a sticky kind of a paste, okay? To this mixture, I'm going to let it cook. I might add a little more water to it. It's getting stuck at the bottom of the pan. That's where that flavor comes in when you scrape everything off. You know, you are getting all of those delicious flavors. Once this has sort of cooked, rendered down a little bit, I add my lamb to it. You can add stewing beef to it. Stewing beef it'll take a little longer to cook, so it depends on your budget. It depends on the time you're taking to make this dish. Lamb is very beautiful in this as well. It doesn't take as long to cook, but the flavors are really great. You can do fowl with this. You can do chicken with it if you want to. You can do ground beef, meatballs, lamb meatballs, veal meatballs. That's really up to you and your personal taste. And the masala will then we'll fold the protein into the masala, lower the heat. It's cooking on the stove, and on you go to the next dish. If you're putting a vegetable dish on the table, a legume dish on the table, this thing is slow cooking in the back, and the longer you cook it, better the flavors, because it really gives it a chance for the spices to bloom. And as many of you know, if you have cooked this particular cuisine, the next day the dish tastes far more better than the day you cooked it, because the spices have had a chance to just open up and really sort of have the flavors to get very complex and big. Okay? Yes?
So when you put the meat in there, is it a fair amount of liquid in the pan?
Correct. Very good question. The lady asked in the front, once you put the meat in here, is there a fair amount of liquid? No. I will add the liquid to taste, because imagine that once you put your raw protein in there, the raw protein is going to sweat, so it's going to create its own liquid, right? But if the mixture is getting stuck to the base of the pan, then yes, of course, you're going to add a little bit of liquid, scrape it up, and then go back to say if the meat has sweated enough. Say, I think I want a little more water to allow for carryover cooking, because you're going to cook down. So it's better for you to add water as you go along, rather than adding too much water to it, because your meat is just going to go into mush. You can fix it, but you can continue to bring the meat and the dish to taste by adding a little at a time. Let the water dry, add a little more. That's a little more laborious. If that's one dish you're making and you have the time to do it, go for it. Otherwise, cover the protein enough with water and let it cook down, and then go back to it once much of the water has evaporated or cooked down, to add a little more to it for your curry component now, which is the gravy if you're serving it with rice, or if you're going to serve it with bread, for them to be able to dip it into it. Okay. Any questions? Any other questions? Yes. I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
White vinegar.
Oh, white vinegar or water. Is this what you asked me? Yes. No, this is just water. I'm just using water. Now, you could use a little bit of white vinegar. That's just for what? What does vinegar do in your protein component? Why do we do it? It tenderizes the meat. So if you're working with a bad cut of meat, vinegar works very, very well because it's working as a tenderizer as well, you know, so it'll keep your meat really nice and tender and cook it really well, you know, so it gives you a good, but here I've added a little water. I'm going to have Ronit take this around so you guys can get the aroma just to see what it looks like, and we'll start with the next masala. I'm sorry, your question. That was the question? Okay. So see, it's very much like a brown sauce. Yes.
So, in the absence of really knowing what the essential taste is of each of those spices, I mean, you know, I wouldn't know if I like more turmeric rather than cumin. You just experiment with it to the, like, sometimes one time you just use a lot of cumin, another time you use a lot of turmeric.
Good question. I just got asked, you know, not knowing what the spices are, how would I know how much to add and what not to add? I invite you again, when you are working with these spices, that to really literally taste it, because our palates, each one of us here has a unique palate, so what might taste on my palate might be very different for you. So my always suggestion is that whatever the recipe is calling for, to study the recipe, deconstruct it, have the spices raw, and then imagine it to see what they taste like when they are cooked. It's the only way for you to understand the complexity of these spices, you know. And turmeric as well. You don't want to use a lot of turmeric because it'll make your dish too yellow. You know, so much of the cuisine here is that how do all of the spices complement each other. You don't want one permeating more so than the other. By order and tradition is that